Here's a good question. Are mental health medications even safe? I've been reading things and looking at a lot of different things and information out there about the efficacy and safety of a lot of different mental health medications, particularly antidepressants. First, I want to talk about the things that I'm reading and seeing that I agree with, and maybe where a little bit of nuance could be helpful. First off, antidepressants are definitely not a cure-all. The narrative around mental health and antidepressants needs to be changed, and historically was very problematic. So the old narrative around medications was that when it comes to things like depression, anxiety, these are simply neurochemical imbalances in the brain that we just need to fix, right? There's just something there, some outside reason why you don't have enough serotonin. So here, take this medication, let's give you some more serotonin, and all your problems are fine. Here's the problem with that narrative, is that the studies that were done with proposed that information were not repeatable. They could not, what I mean by that is that they tried to, but they could not find the same evidence. The whole chemical imbalance narrative simply does not hold up. Now, the caveat of that is that there certainly could be genetic predispositions to how certain people's brain works that might make them maybe more sensitive, maybe more apt to certain movements of mood and anxiety. But the reality is what we know, and honestly, I think common sense would dictate that there's so much more involved when it comes to anxiety and depression. And the reality that both feeling depressed, symptoms of depression, and symptoms of anxiety are not inherently bad things. There are systems' way of giving us information and telling us things that we need to be aware of and conscientious of. But this old narrative of something as simple as a chemical imbalance, it just hasn't held water. And that has also led to this shift or this paradigm within mental health and in medication management that boils these things down to simple problems. Well, let me rephrase that. It boils things down to easy problems. I think that in essence, there is a simplicity to how do we have better mental health, but it's not easy, right? Things like connectedness, exercise, eating the right diet, having a sense of purpose, having a sense of meaning, all of these things, it's simple in concept, but not easy. They're not things that we can do easily. There's that paradigm, that idea is really problematic and has led to an overuse, absolutely an overuse of these medications, and an improper use. And patients not really understanding, if I use a medication, how should I be using it? What are the goals? The most common thing that I see for patients is that they go to generally a primary care provider, but a lot of times even seeing a psychiatrist. They're put on these medications, and that problem most likely will get better because these medications can have a benefit. Sometimes that's just a suppression benefit, and things seem better, and then they stay on these for way too long. There's not someone there that's kind of helping them understand and see all these other elements at play. Maybe these medications aren't working because there's other elements that just simply aren't being addressed. I would say, personally, in my experience, the biggest element that tends to not be addressed are these deeper kind of existential identity questions. Who am I? What's the purpose of life? Where am I going? Hope, having a sense of hope, having a sense of meaning. These problems are generally just not really asked or addressed in a lot of mainstream doctor offices, psychiatrist offices, and they're really important questions. That's a big place where medication falls short. It doesn't necessarily address our problem. It's one tiny piece of this giant puzzle. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that in all cases medications are wrong or the bad choice. Because the way that I see it is medications are a tool. And because a tool has been used ineffectively or wrongly does not necessarily mean it's always wrong to use. Another thing I'll say real quick is even just how medications are approved. The whole pharmaceutical companies, FDA. I mean, that's something I could spend probably an hour talking about. There's lots of different difficulties and struggles and frustrations with that. So that certainly should be kind of held into question. I generally don't tend to be like a giant conspiracy theorist, but I do understand people, and I understand the way that greed motivates things, that just desire for gain, growth, money can really motivate us to do and pursue the wrong things. There's definitely something to be said about that. What I would argue is that in order to use medications properly, if we're going to, has to be done with the human person in mind. And what is, right, how does the human person operate? What are the things that matter? What are the things that need to be addressed in the context of mental health? I think it is an absolute necessity that a psychiatrist or a med provider is aware of these things and really has a greater understanding and in-depth relationship with an individual, so that they can actually make an informed decision and not just leave it there. Give them, if they're going to give them medication, they have to do the due diligence of helping draw them to these other aspects of life. It's like addiction, right? We have medications that can help patients who have extreme addiction, like with opioids, get off the opioids. But we can't just stop there. They have to address all the other aspects of life. Typically, most people would be like, well, you need to do some counseling, or hey, you maybe go to AA. People need to be journeyed with. That can only making a suggestion can only get you so far. And I do not say these things from a place of judgment, because the reality is that we're also up against the system in a way that things have been done, in the ways that we've been taught. And this has been a journey for me, and I'm still figuring this out. I don't pretend to practice perfectly all the time, but it's always my goal to try to get underneath things and try to understand and try to move patients towards a place of healing. If you like the things that I'm talking about here, you agree with them, please comment below. Tell me your thoughts. What is your experience if you've had experience with medications? If you live in the state of Idaho and you want to discuss these things further, maybe you have questions, you want to explore some of these things from a perspective of your own mental health, please visit my website, sparrowmentalhealth.com. Please like and subscribe this video to get more information, get more videos about topics like this. Thank you so much.